Today on RC Overload, we're going to talk about our cheap alternative bashing truck, the ECX Torment. What's going on, guys? It's Matt from RC Overload and welcome back. Yes, today we are talking about the ECX Torment and what it is that we've actually done to this. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that I have recently put in since the last video, but then we'll do a general overview of the entire truck. Now, if some of you guys haven't been following this build series, this is Horizon Hobby's ECX Torment, their short course truck. Now, personally, I like the ECX lineup a lot from my own experience. Why is that? Well, it's a cheap alternative to the RC Hobby while still keeping it hobby grade. And what I mean by that is it's not a Toys R Us or Radio Shack brand where if it breaks, you just throw it away. You can get these ECX trucks for dirt cheap. Some of them starting out at $139 for a brush setup two-wheel drive, just like this truck. Well, not exactly this truck. This truck here has been upgraded to the hills, but to get one stock out of the box is about $140, at least at the time of this filming. But you can still do so much to these. Upgrade them, replace parts. You can do a lot. So having a cheap alternative vehicle, especially for bashing purposes, just going out having some fun in your backyard, the ECX lineup, in my honest opinion, is a great lineup of trucks. They have the Ruckus, which is a two-wheel drive monster truck, which actually my son Carter has. Some of you guys may have seen that. They have a buggy now, and they have a whole bunch of different other trucks as well. The Amp, which is another great truck. It's a kit that you build. You know, great for starting out. But anyways, today we are talking about this Torment. Now, what have we done since the last time you guys saw it? Well, we have finished painting up the Proline Racing Flowtech body to it. Now, when I first got it, I figured it would fit great. It does fit very well on this. However, it does sit a little bit back, just a hair. And I think that has a lot to do with the T-Bone Racing front bumper. How it comes up a little bit, it actually kind of stops the body right, you know, at a certain point. So the body does tend to sit just a hair back. As far as width goes, it's perfect. It is a perfect setup for width. Plus, it's got a lot of aerodynamic possibilities, a lot of spots where you can add venting to. If you guys have watched earlier in this build series, you guys know that I took my old ECX body, which actually I'll grab. This body, if you guys remember this one, the one that actually came with the truck, I had done quite a bit of body modification to this. Vents in the front, vents in the back, and this was to allow more air to flow through it. You guys can watch that video. I explained why it is that it's sometimes necessary to make venting in your bodies. Again, it has to do with parachuting effect. And this truck I should say, is very notorious for the parachuting effect. But we're not talking about this body. We're talking about this body. So this has a ton of possibilities for airflow. This should do very well for bashing. If I decide to bring it down to the track for some fun, it should do very well and be very stable when it launches and driving. So I'm pretty excited to have that on there. Again, I did a basic paint scheme, 3 colors, silver, black, and white. Actually 4 colors with the green on there on the front vent as well. Other than that, I had a spare set of Proline Racing Blockade tires that I decided to put on this from my original Pro 2 drift build that I had. I didn't have a use for those tires on that truck, so I decided to use them on this just for now, something to play around with. They should do very well at a track setting. As far as bashing though, I have a feeling I'm going to be doing a lot of donuts with them. You know, there's not a lot of deep grooves inside of them. So, we'll see. It was something anyways just to have a little bit of fun with, right? So, we did that. We also decided to put on the Proline Racing Power Stroke shocks back on it that I originally had put on. However, I decided to do something a little bit different. Let's take a quick look. So as you guys can see here, I do have the Power Stroke shock bodies on the truck, on both the front and rear. However, the springs are not the same. I'm actually using springs from the Pro Spec spring assortment kit, which is a full one-bodied spring, versus the Power Strokes having actually two springs. A tighter, more stiffer one on the top, and a more softer one on the bottom. So it's got a dual spring rate set up normally with the Power Strokes. But with the Pro Spec, you get a one full body, full length spring that works also with these shocks. The reason I chose to do this was because when I was originally running this on the track at my local track anyways, the drop zone, the truck seemed to be way too stiff no matter what shock oil I decided to put in there. The lowest I went down to was about 10 weight oil in the rear and 15 in the front. So I had to come up with a better way with spring rates because I had put the softest springs that I possibly could and they just seemed a little bit too stiff for this truck. Now normally this truck is really light. The plastic is really light on this, so that is a big problem with it. But I decided to put the Pro Spec springs on there, and as you guys can see, it seems to be very smooth, at least from this point of view. It seems to be very smooth, very soft, a lot more well balanced, not as stiff, I should be saying, really. But we'll really see how well they work when we actually take them out and we start jumping it and we start bashing on it and everything else like that. However, I am very pleased with this setup. As far as shock oil, I did actually go up a little bit, knowing I had a really soft spring in there, to about 20 in the rear and 25 in the front. So we'll see how that goes. It might need some more adjustments out of it, but again, I don't mind spending a day to do that. Moving on from that, we also have the electronics in this truck as well. I decided to go with a company that I recently used in the Pro 2 truck, Hobbystar, which so far I've been very pleased with their stuff. I haven't fully taken it out and actually driven it hard, full battery pack, but I have done some driving in the backyard here, as well as in the basement, and I've been very pleased with how well the motor responds, how well it stays cool, and so forth. So I decided to go back with this again. This is a 80 amp ESC running on a 3800 kV brushless motor. I'm also going to be powering this off of a 2S LiPo battery. However, this can also handle up to 3S from my understanding. If that's wrong, I'll change it in the description. But it shouldn't be. It should be able to handle 3S LiPo on this setup. But again, I don't want to. I just want to run this on 2S. Again, simple, basic bashing truck, right? So the other cool thing about this that I also picked up from Hobbystar is basically a traction control system, a gyro in a sense. Most of you guys know with Spectrum the AVC setup or Traxxas' TSM setup. So that way, basically what it is if your car starts to spin out, the back end kicks out, it actually corrects the steering to help keep the car going straight. Well, Hobbystar has come out with their own version, which is all simple plug and play. But the great part about this is you can make adjustments on how sensitive that is on the third channel of your controller, if your controller is capable of having a third channel on there, which is really awesome. You can either adjust it right off the gyro itself, or I should say the traction control system, or whatever you want to call it. You can adjust it off of that yourself, or you can adjust it off your controller. So I wanted to pick that up. I really wanted to try it to see how well it did for how cheap it is, versus I have played around with the Spectrum AVC setup before, so I know how that works, so I'll be interested to see how well this actually does on this truck. So that's that for electronics, other than we are, again, 2S LiPo battery, using my max amps LiPos. Probably going to go with the 6500 pack or the 4500 milliamp pack as well for about a half an hour, 45-minute runtime is what I'm going to be looking at. So moving on from the electronics, let's just do a general talk about everything that we did. For those of you that have not really watched the series or haven't really gotten caught up as far as what we have done. Otherwise, you can watch all the other videos in the description box. All links will be down there. Now, as you guys can see, we put in the T-Bone Racing front and rear ECX Torment bumpers. These should add in a lot of protection to the truck, especially when we're jumping and it lands on the front or it lands on the back side. Moving on from that, we have the RPM control arms, hubs, knuckles, C-hubs, rear hubs, everything RPM suspension related that you possibly can put in this. This stiffened up the suspension so much. This is just alone is a huge upgrade if you can put all that into it as well. On top of that, we put in the RPM steering rack assembly. This should tighten up the steering a bit, making things a lot more responsive and less wandering from having loose parts on there. Next thing we put in was the Traxxas turnbuckles. We did that for both the camber and the toe in the front and the camber in the rear. This way we have adjustments that we can make to the wheel if we need to fine tune it or whatnot. If the car's pulling one way, so forth, you can make adjustments. Whereas the stock setup, it had a plastic bar, non-adjustable. So that alone right there is a great upgrade and great improvement. It will also stiffen up your suspension and make things a lot smoother. The next thing that we did was install the hot racing rear drive shafts, which I just talked to you guys about. And then we also put in the ECX hardened steel transmission gears and differential. Doing that, especially with a brushless system, should help keep anything from breaking as far as the transmission goes. But that's it, you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this series. Hopefully this gave you guys some ideas, especially for a cheap bashing truck and some cheap upgrades and some good upgrades that you guys can do to your truck to help improve it in the long haul. So, if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment box below. Feel free to check out the description box. I have coupon codes in there for you guys. I have links to videos and reference to part numbers and everything else like that as well in this description box. Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I do post up a lot of pictures of everything I'm doing and, keep you guys updated as far as what I'm doing in the studio here and what's going on with RC Overload in general. So, make sure you're following those. And that should do it, you guys. So, now that all the builds are pretty much done, we can finally get out and start enjoying some running videos. So, I got a lot of cool ideas for this summer, guys. Stick around, subscribe if you haven't yet. And I will see you guys next time on the next RC Overload. Later.